So we're focusing on settings that are going to make your game run smoother, as well as be able to loot faster, feel less clunky, and be a little bit more responsive. First page of graphics is going to be display. I use full screen exclusive. You can go ahead and do full screen borderless if you want to go ahead and tab out frequently. In terms of NVIDIA Reflex low latency, I have that on plus boost. At the top, you can see my GPU number is higher than my CPU number. If the GPU is higher, then you do on plus boost. If the CPU is higher, then you just do on. I've gone in game, I've done multiple tests, I've restarted. My GPU ends up being higher because I probably need to upgrade it. So I'm playing on plus boost. Sustainability, custom, VSync off, custom frame rate. I don't really play with that. I kind of just have it on my default monitor. If you do tab out, it'll put the frame rate to 120, and then the menu is just at 60, but it doesn't really all that matter too much. Reduce menu render resolution, I have that as native. Pause game rendering off. Reduce quality when inactive, I have that off, and then focus mode off. HDR is better suited for the campaign. If your monitor is capable of it, probably leave it to there and then kind of have your game function normally when it comes to PvP. Quality, this is where we're going to get into a lot of different settings. Most of these won't be available on console. I have a full console guide that I already put out about a month ago if you want to go ahead and check that one out in case I happen to miss any that are on your console, but we should be able to hit most of those if you are on a PlayStation or Xbox. So I go ahead and have dynamic resolution off. My render resolution is set to 100. I've been using Fidelity Cast for multiple years. I think that still ends up being the best option. We put that at 70. You can go as up to 85, 100, wherever you want. I noticed that if I put it too high, then the game just looks a little too sharp, but people don't really care about that. In some cases, they prefer it that way. So that will be preference. I have frame generation off, although you will get more frames. I don't have a 40 series card, 1, and 2, it'll add a little bit of input latency when it's trying to AI generate those frames, which is kind of unnecessary in a PvP environment. You don't want any excess delay. VRAM scale target, I have that set to 85. It really just depends on your system. Variable rate shading, I do have that on. Do have to reboot your game for this one to actually take effect. For details and textures, I have that happy medium where I'm trying to get the most amount of frames while not just putting everything to low and still making your game look good. So for a lot of these, I have them set to normal. If you just want more frames, you can just lower a lot of these. Some I kind of have where they don't really impact it, so maybe I go a little bit higher, but in general, I kind of keep things more towards the middle, so I get a little bit more frames while also getting a game that looks decent. Texture resolution, normal. Texture, filter, anisotropic, normal. Depth of field, off. That kind of leads to a little bit of blurriness. Detail quality, normal. Particle resolution, I have that set to normal. You can actually go detail quality. You can actually lower that one, but as you can see, it doesn't have an impact on GPU or VRAM that much. It's set to low. Bullet impact, so I can see kind of the bullet spread. I think generally it doesn't have a big impact, so not really worth turning off. Persistent effects, I have that on. You could easily turn that off since it does have a medium impact on VRAM if you wanted to have a little bit more of that. Shader quality, I have set to low. On-demand texture streaming, I have it set to minimal. I think Exclusive Ace has done some testing on this, and basically there's not much of a difference, so I let it cap out as soon as it can. Too bad they removed the option to turn it off. So I basically do minimal, lower. Download limits, I have them on. So even when I initially start, as soon as I hit that 1 gigabyte, it cuts off and I'm not downloading anymore and it has zero impact. Local texture streaming quality, low. Shadow and lighting, I have shadow quality set to normal. Sometimes if you put it too low, it ends up kind of giving you that blurred effect, which kind of makes it hard to see in some of the shadows, or certain effects get blurred instead of having them kind of clear outlines. You can go higher, but it will have a bigger impact on your VRAM and GPU. Screen space shadows, I have those set to low. Occlusion and light quality off. Screen space reflections off. Static reflection quality low. Environment tessellation off. Volumetric quality low. Deferred physics quality off. Weather grid volumes off. Water quality off. Obviously those things will make your game look great. Maybe if you play campaign, you juice everything up, you run at 40 frames, and the game looks great, but it won't perform that well. For view, we have field of view as set to 107. People do like maxing this out, but generally where most people will find the happy medium is between 95 and probably about 110 or 115. Usually what will end up happening if you go too high, you kind of get that fisheye lens effect, which some people don't like, and it takes a little bit to get accustomed to. I generally keep mine at 107 for multiplayer, zombies, and Warzone. So all of my modes are universal across the board. It's not like I have to get used to a different setting, because as you change your field of view, it also impacts your sensitivity. So if you don't want to worry about your sensitivity feeling different in each game mode, then you kind of just leave this one consistent across the board. ADS field of view affected, weapon field of view wide, and then we got third person field of view 90, vehicle field of view wide, motion blurs off, no blurriness, and then we got to get rid rid of some of the camera movement, we put it to lower. Sadly, you can't just get rid of this entirely down to like 20% or something like that. Third person ADS transition, inverted flashbang, I have that off. If you want your screen to go black instead of white, you can actually turn that on. We'll be doing the interface in a quick second, but before that, we'll go ahead and get rid of our controller settings. And with this game, there's a lot of settings that are totally different, and there's some set to default that undo some of the settings you've had previously, which I'll go ahead and kind of point out some of those. I'm playing on a controller. If you're on keyboard and mouse, you kind of got to figure out your own bindings in the keyboard and mouse section. So this is mainly for controller, which is a majority of Call of Duty players. So we got button layout. I use default. You could go ahead and use different ones. There's tactical, bumper, jumper. Depends if you have paddles. I play on a PS5 Edge controller, plugs right in, and I can have jump and slide and mantle and all that type of stuff on there. If you want to do custom bindings, you can. And then a little bit lower, if you want to play flip triggers, which I do, I play L1, R1 is how I shoot and aim. On Xbox, it's a little bit less ergonomic, so I usually use triggers on Xbox controller. Stick layout, I usually have that default. Sensitivity, I usually have my horizontal one higher than my vertical. Simplified controls off, low motor strain preset off, bumper off. Vibration, we usually turn that one off. Trigger effect off. Dead zones, this is one that's tricky. You generally got to make sure it works for your individual controller. And too bad you can't do the test while modifying them, but you kind of just got to go back and forth. So you go ahead and do the dead zone test, and then what happens is you just move your joystick a little bit and you let it go. And you can see mine goes back to 0. Pretty much no matter which way I move it. It was a -1 there for a second. Left one, same thing. Mine goes back to 0. If you are having a controller that has like one of these things going on, what happens is you want to increase your dead zone so that you don't have a ton of stick drift. I know there's this ongoing thing where it's like, oh, you want tons of stick drift because you get more aim assist. What happens is the threshold you need for aim assist is, I believe, 35%. Hexsmith might correct me on that, but I think that's what he's identified. I think it's around 30%. So you would need this much stick drift before you got actual aim assist rotation. If you have that much, you probably need a new controller. So I generally have these set to 2 since my controller responsiveness is pretty good. My left analog stick, I want to make sure that I'm getting to max mobility as fast as possible before I even reach that threshold. So right here, you can see my zone from right there. It goes right there and I'm getting max already. So essentially once I touch that line, it's already touching the top. So I get as much input as possible. But you don't really want that on the aiming stick. You don't want it to be where you're getting to this point and all of a sudden your aim is actively pushing like your max input in it. So generally I remove most of that as well. I think you can go to 100 as well. So it's just like 1-to-1. That's how it's going to feel. And that's the dead zone part of it. I probably went a little bit too much into that, but at least you'll know how to fix that going forward. In terms of the triggers, I just have those set to 0. So the millisecond I'm hitting the button, it's doing the action I want it to do. And one thing they've done is they've hid away the ADS sense multiplier. It's over here in the aiming section. It's in sensitivity multiplier. It is this one down here, the 5th one down. It's ADS sense multiplier before. This used to be right next to your sense. So if you feel like your aim is a little too high, this might be at 1 if you're normally accustomed to lowering it. I usually put it at 0.85, 0.8 depending on the COD, and then maybe I tune it over time if I feel like I'm too slow in the ADS while tracking. So that one is kind of where it's hidden now. If you want to adjust other ones towards preference, you definitely could. And then they also have even more settings hidden in this aiming advanced sensitivity. So this one I'll go ahead and favorite so that we'll have that in that section. Look inversion, I don't play look inversion, everything's standard. ADS sense transitioning. For whatever reason, I believe the game used to be on instant and now it defaults to gradual, and that's led to a lot of weird ADS impact. So I go ahead and put that one back to instant. So I'm getting the sensitivity slowdown immediately that you get from aiming down sight versus it gradually transitioning from your normal movement to the ADS slowdown over time. Dynamic, I'm still on dynamic. I know some people are doing, hey, do linear and put it to 0 and all these other. I just use dynamic. This is what I've used for the past 3 or 4 years. I'm going to keep using that until there's something revolutionary that comes out that changes that. Dynamic, standard, linear, whatever you're going to shoot straighter with, that's the answer, right? Go play around with them. Go ahead and favorite that one if you want to go ahead and experiment with a little one, see which whenever you feel better with. Maybe it's placebo, but overall I'm keeping mine dynamic. Aim assist, we'll go ahead and have those both on, even though this one's only for campaign and zombies. And then motion sensor, we have that off. This would be like if you're using your gyro. Some other people have been selling snake oil, going in here and turning on this like FOV scaling or whatever. This is only for the motion sensors, so I wouldn't really pay too much attention to that. Movement, I have tactical sprint assist on, and then we have the sprint delay to 0. If you were on console, you would have to have a mouse if you wanted. You can actually click in here and you can change this to a 1 if you really wanted, but a 0 should suffice if you really can't get the option to do that. Go ahead and connect your regular mouse, hook it up to your console. They are native. You'll be able to go in there, click on that box and change it to a 1 if you feel like there's a noticeable delay at 0. I didn't really notice that. The sprint assist and sprint backwards assist, I have those on. And then mantle assist, we have that set to off. All of those off. And then tight. I'm not going to accidentally grab a ledge that's outside of my view. And then we also have the crouch assist off, corner slice. I am debating on turning this one off for Warzone. I don't mind it for multiplayer, but I feel like I'm not really liking it as much for Warzone. Just, I don't know if the maps or how you play Warzone is a little bit different. I just don't like that the animation doesn't line up with what the character model's actually doing. If I feel like I'm doing this, I only feel like I'm showing half of my, like a part of my body, but what's actually happening is your character's fully standing out, which isn't good. Slide dive behavior. This is one they ended up having to change. For whatever reason with the update, they changed it so hybrid just doesn't feel the same anymore. I don't know. They broke it personally for me. So what I've done is I've gone to tap to slide, and since sliding is the main animation that I'm going to be doing, and then when you go ahead and do the show more, you can actually turn that delay to short, so you don't have to actually hold it that long to make it do the dive. So it still feels like hybrid a little bit, but you don't have to press the L3. So it's actually a little bit better than it was before. So basically a lot smoother, so you're not accidentally sliding or diving when you want to do the opposite. It kind of solves that. Unfortunately, hybrid broke for some reason for me. Sprint restore on, slide maintain sprint on, parachute automatic behavior. We turned that one off. For whatever reason, that got reset, so when you're parachuting in the first time, your parachute will deploy and you're not able to race down to the floor to get that loot, get that gun before you go ahead and fight that engagement. Mantle cancels reload, we have that off, and then advanced movement setting. Tactical sprint toggle, auto move forward off, auto door peek off, ground mantle off, and then tactical sprint. For whatever reason, this one was set to double tap. I believe with the update, go ahead and put it back to single tap. And then underwater, I use triggers, but you could use free. That one's preference. And then door bash, I have that set to on. Vehicle behaviors, I have those all default, so I'm not changing any of those. Aim down sight behavior, hold on toggle, tac stance activation, ADS, and then the down button for the weapons that have that. There's a specific attachment for those ones. Weapon mount, ADS melee, dedicated melee, hold for melee, and then body shield. I've actually accidentally executed someone, so I switched to prioritize body shield. So that one, at least if I do that, then it's more likely I can break out of that. I can do an execution move. I can go ahead and reposition myself and shoot. But if you do an execution and you get caught accidentally doing that, you can't cancel it. Armor plate all, 1 by 1, equipment behavior hold, manual fire, press, combat advanced. Here's the one they really broke for some reason. They even had to tweet it. I'm like, why can't you just change the setting? Is down over here, sprint cancels reload. Now that's got to be set to off. Make sure you that, otherwise the game feels super clunky, and it feels like after we integrated with Warzone 3 or Warzone 2.5 or whatever you want to call it last year, where you couldn't reload and it was buggy, and then they ended up fixing it. Well, now there's a setting, and just turn that off. I use pair to Kimbo behavior, ADS stick swap on, and then interact reload behavior. Prioritize interact is the best one if you're trying to be a fast looter, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate a little bit of this when we go into the menus to adjust our individual settings for the HUD. Before we get into interface, I know audio is a little bit murky right now. They already put out a tweet saying, hey, we're gonna go ahead and fix some of these things. I'm sure some of these things will be needed to be changed after they fix whatever it is, but this is kind of as good as it gets for the start. I have master volume 100. That's gonna depend on how you get your audio. I'm able to tune my audio low based off whatever the 100 is. I have music off entirely. We have the headphone sound. I have that for my, that's where I get my audio through. And then enhanced audio. This is the new feature they had. And then this is the free version. But if you want the enhanced version where you get your own profile, you can go in there. And then audio mix, I have this set to Treyarch, mono off, mute game when minimized. I have that off, mute license music off. I can go ahead and turn that one on since I record gameplay. If anyone plays an audio track, asymmetrical hearing off. And then configure the frequency. This is kind of crazy. I know nothing about, so I'm not going to recommend any of those. I'm sure somebody with a little bit more knowledge on that will be able to figure out, hey, this is the tune you want for audio. Then interface, visual support presets off, automatic prompts, Gameplay tips off. Skip introduction movie so we can load up quicker. Kill cam off. Skipping so that we can actually watch the kill cam. I generally want to watch those, especially if you're going to report someone that you think is cheating. Tooltips off. Telemetry, you can kind of put on whatever's most important. I think when you're figuring out if you're going to do the on plus boost, you'll go ahead and turn on the CPU card time and the processor time. But since I've already tested those, I have those off. Network alert icons on, and then hardware in-game on. Subtitles, I have those all on, but you can really turn off those if you don't like them. I have them on default size. And color customization. Generally, you could change any of these you want to your own preferences. I like them the way they are. And then when it comes to the color filter, you want to go ahead and put that to 2. I've been running this with both and 100 basically since Warzone introduced this setting, but I like it 100. It's fine. I don't have to do anything post-processing to my gameplay to make it look better on that side. Then the gameplay HUD, we'll get into the game. Like I mentioned earlier, the prioritize interact will make it so that you loot with one button. So basically that's how it'll work. You'll just press the button and there it goes. If I needed to come up to a box and I wanted to maybe not loot and I wanted to reload, I just hold for reload. So now I reload. There you go. If I go ahead and fire the weapon, I could tap to interact and it'll do it. So that's going to speed up your looting. That's kind of what I referenced earlier. And I think this is one of the parts that a lot of people struggle with when their settings reset. Everything feels slow. It'll go ahead and automatically swap them too. And if I need to reload, instead of doing that, I always hold. So you get in the habit of holding to reload. And then if I want to go ahead and interact, I can still interact while the animation is going on. Now let's go ahead and talk about the HUD. You kind of see how my HUD is set up. If we go ahead and go to the interface, we can go ahead and change some of these things. Gameplay HUD bounds. And what this does is going to bring in our HUD and bring it a little bit tighter. If I go ahead and put this all the way towards the top, what you're going to do is see my loadout go towards the bottom. So now it's touching the edge. Even the different information at the top left is kind of covering the directional indication of where I'm at on the map. So that's a little bit too high in my opinion. You can actually adjust this depending on how far you sit from your screen, your monitor, that type of stuff. For me, I always bring this in so that I get the information closer to where I'm looking, which is towards the center of the screen. Now you can see, boom, the island, you can read it now. It's not covered by the information. My HUD is just tighter in, and I can see my kill count and all that type of stuff. You can also change it to square, which will allow you to get more area. So if we look at here, we can see it kind of cuts off the outer edges. So you're getting less information, which is not good. You want more information. We're gonna make sure that that's set to square. It moves with us. Radar, it's gonna get rid of all the information. So you can kind of see how it is there. Basically, you don't have any information. You don't really need that. I don't know when that would be practical, but they do have the setting there for somebody. Compass, you can go ahead and put it to the top if you're used to giving the call outs up top. But for me, since I look at the mini map most of the time, or pretty much all the time, you can do that. You can see it also changes how big the mini map is. It kind of zooms in and stretches it a little bit. You don't get more visibility, but by putting it to the center, you can see kind of it changes how the mini map looks. If you go ahead and put that back onto the mini map, you'll see it kind of shrunk the mini map a little bit. So you kind of have the preference of how you want to do it. Crosshair, they added a new feature. You can actually change the center dot. So right now you can see it's a little white dot. If we're looking at the door, you can see the little white dot in the middle. If we go ahead and interface it, we can actually make it largest and it'll make it pretty big dot. Like as we run around, you see a huge dot. On top of that, you can also change the color. Some people are doing that. Personally, I like the larger dot, but not the largest. And then you could actually change the color to whatever you want. You could figure out the hex code in Paint, and then you can get the exact color you want. So if you want a specific one, you just apply color, and boom, now I have the red dot with the red crosshairs. You can kind of see how that is. Hit marker visuals on, damage hit markers on, and then these you can actually lower the opacity if you wanted them to be a little bit see-through. Again, that one's going to come down to preference. Naturally, there is, even at 100, there's a natural opacity that's a little bit lower. And if you want to go ahead and save some quick settings are there at your hand if your most used settings. Hopefully you find this helpful. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.